G'day people, welcome to my channel. Today I am stitching out design 004T on a Janome Skyline S9. Thanks Velma for loaning me your machine. Stick around till the end of the video because I'm going to talk about what you can do to make the back of the design look better. Hoop up your backing fabric right side down and put one layer of wadding in there. Design 004T is a Trapunto design and we need to get some extra wadding in there in order to make it puff up. So I've got 2 extra layers of wadding here and I need to make sure that they are going to completely cover the area that is going to be trapuntoed. So we're back at the machine, and one of the things to note about Janome machines is that when you open up any design, even if you've put the whole design into one corner, when you open it, the machine will always put its needle right in the middle of the hoop. And that's where it's put it now. And I'm going to go start, stop. And remember, we've got this set to one step stop. And it's doing the first colour in this design. Now I'm doing this on top of 3 layers of wadding. There's no fabric on top. And I'm not really worried about the thread that's going to the back. So here we go. I'm babysitting it the same as I do with the other parts of things when they first start. At this point, I need to take the hoop off the machine and go back to my table with the hoop, but without getting this out of the hoop. So here we are back at the cutting table. Do not take this out of the hoop. What we're going to do is cut away the top 2 layers, and I could have done this with actually much less fabric or batting on this than I did. I'm going to cut away the top 2 layers of this wadding, but do not pop it out of the hoop. So here we are. I've cut that out for you. You'll notice it's not perfect. Doesn't matter. What we're trying to do is get some extra layers in the middle, and on the back, there it is. We got a nest because I didn't do the pulling the thread up and I did the 1 stitch stop. But we're now going back to the sewing machine to stitch out the next colour. So this one, the machine told us was blue. You do it in whatever colour suits you, doesn't matter. But we are now going back to do the stitch that the machine says is in red. If your fabric is a bit transparent and you use a dark colour for that first part of the stitch out, it may be obvious through the fabric afterwards, and that is not necessarily the effect that you want. So we're now back at the machine. We've attached the hoop to the machine and we hadn't moved anything. Between when we took it out and came back, nothing has been moved. Put my fabric in here. It's going to go over the top. And now we start. Remember, that was our 1 stitch stop, which hopefully, no, I've managed to miss it, so I'm going to try again. There because I do want to get that bobbin thread up now. And remember, the first thing it's going to do when we get on the red colour is it's going to stitch the outside of the design. I'm babysitting it, making sure I don't get any creases. Also making sure I don't sew through my fingers. I did that once as a 5-year-old. I've never done it again. So there's my outside square. and the machine has cut that thread off at the end. Now it's moving to the middle. I'm going to let it do its one stitch stop. Pull up my bobbin thread. You'll see even as this sews how this part of the pattern, I hope you can see, is now starting to stand up in the middle. So it's ready to do the stippling. One stitch stop, which pulls my bobbin thread up to the top. One of the things I haven't mentioned at this point is that if I move the speed limiter on the machine and put it down to the very lowest, the machine will be working now at 400 stitches per minute. And if I move it over to the far right, the machine will now be working at 600 stitches per minute. And the design is finished and the machine takes it back to the center. So here is the front of the design, and you can see it looks perfect. There's no threads hanging off. That's where I did the one stitch stop and I left the thread to go underneath. It looks fine from the top. Down here is where the stippling started. That looks fine. Up here is where it started to do the outside square. That looks fine. But on the back, there are some difficulties. So we'll have a look at that too. On the back, this little pile of thread, which has come through from the needle, that's what I refer to as the nest of thread when you don't do one stitch stop. So that's when I was about to do the stitch here and I let it go underneath. That is where it got buried. That thread got buried. So by doing the one stitch stop, which happened there and down here and up here, I don't have that nest of thread. What I do have is the end pieces where my machine cut things off. So there's a little tiny piece of thread there. There's a tiny piece of thread there. There would be a tiny one in here where my thread was cut as well. Those ones, there is nothing to stop me from trimming them back closer. But that nest, I'd rather not have that on the back. The next thing is to notice around here, you can see the needle thread is coming underneath. I'd rather that wasn't happening, and there are two ways that we can make it look better. The first way would be to make sure that the bobbin thread matched the top thread, and then these little tiny bits would be much less visible. So the first thing to think about is having the same thread in the needle as in your bobbin, because then on the back it will be much less obvious if the top thread is coming down underneath. But that doesn't solve the whole problem. What I really need to be doing is increasing the tension on my needle thread whilst I'm doing the embroidery, so that it's more like a normal stitch and doesn't sit down underneath the item that I'm stitching. Our embroidery machines are intended to have the top thread, the needle thread, coming down under the fabric and sitting down under there, and the bobbin thread sitting flat underneath. And the reason for that is that the machines, we don't want the bobbin thread to ever be appearing in the top when we're doing a normal embroidery. In this case, because I want the machine to do a quilting design and I want it to look like regular stitching, I actually need something to bring that bobbin thread up from underneath into where it's joining up with the needle thread being within the fabric. Now, to do that, I need to increase the tension on the needle. Depending on your machine, this can be done in settings or in the particular design. So in a Janome machine, you have the option to change the tension while you are doing a particular design, and you increase the needle tension. So take it over to the right. So for you, that will be that way until you get a sufficiently pulled up bobbin thread so that it looks like a regular stitch underneath. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hope you're learning something about your machine and how to make my designs work. Next time I'll be showing you how the back of a quilt as you go in my method can be finished off. See you then.